What if your roommate existed yesterday, but no one else remembers them today? The first time Emma Brooks noticed something strange about her new roommate, it was late on a Sunday night. She had been lying in bed scrolling aimlessly on her phone when Lily, tall, quiet, with her ever-present messy black hair covering half her face, sat at the desk, scribbling furiously in a battered leather notebook. Emma had only lived with her for 3 weeks, but she already knew Lily was different from most students at Hillsworth University. She wasn't the kind to party or even chat much. Instead, she seemed to drift around the edges of every conversation, her eyes heavy, as though she was always carrying secrets she couldn't tell. That night, Emma joked, "You planning to write the next great American novel in one sitting?" expecting at least a smile. But Lily didn't even look up. She just paused, tapped her pen, and whispered something Emma couldn't catch. It sounded like, "They don't like when we talk too much." Emma frowned. "What?" But Lily only shook her head quickly and stuffed the notebook into her drawer. "Nothing, just don't stay up too late." It was odd, but Emma brushed it off. College was full of eccentric people after all. And besides, Lily wasn't unfriendly, just strange, like she was living in some private world that occasionally cracked open in front of Emma. The next morning, Emma woke to silence. She sat up, blinking against the gray light bleeding through the blinds. Something felt off immediately, though she couldn't place what. Then her gaze drifted to the other side of the room, and her stomach tightened. Lily's bed was perfectly made. Too perfectly. The sheets tucked hospital style, the pillow fluffed, the comforter smoothed down. Every trace of Lily, the scattered clothes, the notebooks on the desk, the half-empty mug of tea, was gone. Vanished. Emma pushed off her own blankets and walked slowly to the desk. Empty. The drawers, too. Even the faint lavender scent that always clung to Lily's side of the room was missing. It was as if she had never been there. "Lily!" Emma called softly, as though expecting her to pop out from the closet with a laugh. Nothing. She pulled the closet door open. Inside were only Emma's clothes. Not a single item of Lily's remained. A prickling unease spread through her chest. Maybe Lily had left early for class, or gone home for the weekend? But no. Emma remembered seeing her just last night, writing furiously in that notebook, whispering something about they. Emma dressed quickly and made her way across campus to the dining hall. She spotted her friend Sarah at a corner table. "Hey, have you seen Lily this morning?" she asked, sliding into the seat. Sarah looked up from her cereal, eyebrows knitting together. "Lily? Who's Lily?" Emma blinked. "My roommate. Tall, black hair. She was with me at the bookstore last week. Don't you remember?" Sarah tilted her head. "Emma, you don't have a roommate. You've always had a single." For a moment, Emma thought Sarah was joking, but the confusion on her friend's face was too real. Her stomach flipped. No, that's not true. I've been living with Lily for almost a month." Sarah gave her a worried look. "Are you okay? Maybe you're stressed. Midterms mess with people." Emma forced a laugh, though her throat was dry. "Yeah, maybe." But the more people she asked, the stranger it became. No one remembered Lily, not her classmates, not her RA, not even the administration office. When Emma pulled up her housing record online, it listed her room as a single occupancy from the start of the semester. The name Lily didn't appear anywhere in the system. By noon, Emma's hands were trembling. She dug through her phone, scrolling back through weeks of photos. There should have been at least a few with Lily, selfies from their bookstore trip, shots of her sitting at the desk, anything. But in every photo, Emma remembered Lily being in... She wasn't there, just empty space. Emma slammed the phone down on her desk when she got back to the dorm. "No, this is impossible," she whispered to the empty room. Her heart hammered in her ears. That was when she noticed something. The floorboard near Lily's bed looked slightly raised, like it had been pried open before. Kneeling down, Emma wedged her nails beneath the edge and pulled. With a groan of wood, the board lifted, revealing a narrow gap beneath. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed and creased as though it had been hidden for a long time. Emma's pulse thundered as she unfolded it with trembling hands. The handwriting was unmistakable. Lily's. Sharp, angular letters scratched in black ink. "If you're reading this, it means they've taken me. Don't let them find you." Emma's breath caught in her throat. The words blurred before her eyes. A sound broke the silence, soft, deliberate. The faint click of the closet door creaking shut on its own. Emma whipped her head toward it. The closet was closed now. She hadn't touched it. Her pulse roared in her ears as she whispered into the air, "Lily." And in that breathless, terrified moment, she thought she heard it. Faint, almost swallowed by silence. A voice. Her missing roommate's voice, whispering her name. Emma's hands were still shaking from the closet whisper when she sat down on her bed, clutching the folded note. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what had just happened. She had imagined the voice, she told herself. It had to be her imagination. But deep down, a primal unease clawed at her chest. She couldn't shake the sensation that the room itself was watching her, that every shadow in the corners was alive, waiting. By the time she forced herself to stand, the dorm was quiet, too quiet. Hallways that had always echoed with chatter and the clatter of late-night footsteps were now silent, empty. Emma pressed her ear to the door, half expecting to hear the faint shuffle of Lily's sneakers or the rustle of her notebooks. But there was nothing, just an oppressive, heavy silence that seemed to press against her eardrums. Determined to find answers, she stormed down to the administrative offices. The secretary, a plump woman with spectacles perched on the tip of her nose, looked up and smiled. "How can I help you, Emma?" I need to ask about my roommate. Lily. She's missing," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. The woman blinked slowly, adjusting her glasses. "I'm sorry, Emma. You've always had a single room. You've never had a roommate." Emma froze. The words hit her like a physical blow. "That's impossible. I've lived with her for weeks. She's right there." She pointed toward the hallway, but there was nothing there. Only the sterile office walls and the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. The woman frowned. "Are you feeling all right? Maybe you need to rest." Emma's stomach churned, her throat tightening. She left the office quickly, muttering under her breath. Everyone she asked, from classmates to professors, said the same thing. Lily never existed. It was as if she had been completely erased from history, from the physical world, from Emma's life. Back in her dorm, Emma's paranoia began to spiral. She checked her phone again, scrolling through texts and photos. Any image that should have contained Lily had been subtly altered or erased. Group photos showed only Emma and other classmates. The spaces where Lily should have been were blurred, as though a digital smear had wiped her out. Emma's hands shook so violently that she dropped her phone, the screen cracking on impact. She pressed her palm against the fractured glass, her reflection staring back at her, wide-eyed, pale, and terrified. That night, sleep was impossible. Emma kept hearing sounds, soft scraping, distant murmurs, footsteps that stopped when she turned her head. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Lily's face, pale and hollow-eyed, fading in and out of the shadows of her room. A sense of dread pressed on her chest so heavily that she felt suffocated. The whispers started again around midnight, soft at first, almost playful. "Emma, come closer." The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, echoing against the walls, crawling under the floorboards, wrapping around her mind. Emma froze, clutching the edges of her blanket as if it could protect her. The voice repeated, urgent and insistent. "You have to find me, before they do." A chill ran down her spine as she realized that the whisper wasn't coming from the closet this time. It seemed to be all around her, infiltrating the very air. She jumped up and ran to the door, yanking it open. The hallway was empty, but she caught a glimpse of a figure at the far end, a man in a long black coat standing perfectly still, watching her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. She blinked. When she looked again, he was gone. Emma's phone buzzed and she nearly screamed. A text from an unknown number appeared. "Stop looking, it's too late." Her fingers trembled as she typed back, "Who is this? What's happening?" No reply. The dorm room no longer felt safe. Every shadow looked like a figure, every creak in the floorboards a step closer. She tried to call her parents, her friends, anyone, but every line she dialed was dead. No connection. The walls themselves seemed to hum, low and insistent, pressing against her consciousness. Determined to find proof, Emma returned to Lily's closet. She had checked it earlier, but maybe there was something she missed. She pried it open carefully, her fingers trembling. The shelves were empty, but the floorboard beneath where Lily's bed had been creaked under her weight. Emma crouched and ran her hand along the edges, fingers brushing over a faint carving. Tiny symbols etched into the wood. They were strange, angular, and unfamiliar, yet somehow deeply familiar, as if they were embedded in her memory. Her heart raced. She pressed her hand to the symbols and felt a sudden pulse, a vibration like a heartbeat beneath her fingers. A soft, icy voice whispered in her mind, "You shouldn't be here. Leave." Emma stumbled backward, her breath ragged. The air in the room thickened, almost solid. Shadows pooled in the corners, curling like smoke, and the faint outline of Lily appeared in one of them, pale, almost translucent, staring at her with desperate eyes. The figure flickered in and out of existence, whispering again, "They're coming. You have to hide." Before Emma could respond, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. The whispering grew louder, multiplied, as though dozens of voices surrounded her. Her phone, which had been resting on the desk, lit up with a single word glowing on the cracked screen. Alone. Emma's hands clutched her head as the whispers escalated into frantic, overlapping voices. She backed into a corner, shivering, her mind screaming for sense, for logic, for escape. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the voices stopped. The room was silent again, suffocatingly so, but the shadows had shifted. A soft knock came from the door, slow, deliberate. Each tap echoed like a gunshot in the quiet. Emma froze, her eyes wide. She didn't want to look, but she had to. Slowly, she turned toward the door, heart hammering against her ribs. The doorknob rattled once, twice, and then, in a voice that froze her blood, "Emma, it's time." Emma's body trembled as she backed into the corner, staring at the door as though the shadows themselves would burst through it. The soft voice that had called her name was gone, replaced by a suffocating silence that pressed on her chest. She wanted to run, to leave the dorm, to escape, but her legs refused to obey. Every fiber of her being screamed that she was being watched, hunted even, and yet, as she edged toward the window, the blinds snapped shut with no wind, plunging her into near darkness. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. "You can't hide." Emma dropped it in shock. It hit the floor and slid under the bed. Her hand shook violently as she tried to retrieve it, but the shadows seemed to stretch, curling around her fingers like smoke, resisting her grasp. Heart racing, she crawled to the bed and grabbed the phone, only to find the screen blank, the battery inexplicably dead. A chill ran down her spine. How could it be dead? She had charged it just hours ago. The whispers started again, softer this time, almost teasing. They crawled along the walls and the ceiling, wrapping around her ears. "You're next. You're next." They seemed to come from everywhere, yet nowhere. Emma pressed her palms to her ears, rocking back and forth, trying to silence them. Her breathing became erratic, shallow gasps that made her feel dizzy, unsteady. She remembered the hidden note Lily had left. "Don't let them find you." Don't let who find her? Who were they? Emma felt a surge of panic, an urgent, pressing fear that she had only begun to comprehend. She needed answers, proof, some connection to Lily. Anyone who could validate what she had seen. what she had experienced. That night, when the dorm quieted and most students had retreated to their rooms, Emma ventured to Lily's desk. She opened the bottom drawer and discovered something she hadn't seen before: a small leather-bound diary, frayed at the edges, almost hidden beneath a false bottom. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, and the familiar angular handwriting made her stomach twist. It was Lily's. The diary entries started innocuously enough, mundane notes about classes, cafeteria food, and weekend plans. But as Emma read further, the tone shifted. The handwriting became hurried, more jagged, as if the writer's hand was shaking with fear. There were mentions of the others and of people who simply disappeared. Names crossed out, dates erased, events that should have happened but apparently never did. Lily wrote about the feeling of being watched, of being hunted by invisible forces that manipulated memory, bending reality so no one could see the truth. Emma's eyes widened at one passage. "I've seen them take people, not dead. They're erased. From photos, records, everyone's mind. I'm next if I stay in plain sight. If you find this, hide. Don't trust anyone. Don't stay in the dorm after midnight." She swallowed hard, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Midnight. It was almost midnight now. The hairs on the back of her neck stood on end. She glanced at the clock. 11:47 p.m. The first scratch came from the closet. Soft, intentional, slow, like fingernails dragging across wood. Emma froze, barely daring to breathe. The scratching grew louder, echoing, almost rhythmic, building an unnatural tension in the room. She turned toward the closet door. Shadows pooled at its base, flickering under the dim light. Emma thought she saw movement, a brief flicker of black hair, a pale hand reaching from the gap beneath the door. Her stomach lurched. Lily? But she forced herself not to call out. Not yet. Another whisper slithered through the air. "Emma, hurry. You don't have much time." The voice was urgent, desperate, like Lily was both warning and pleading at the same time. Emma's hand shook as she flipped through more pages of the diary. There was a map of the dorm building, crude but detailed, with strange symbols scrawled on certain rooms and hallways. One hallway was circled repeatedly, marked with the words, "The path to safety, if you can survive the shadows." The scratching intensified. Emma's heart hammered, each beat echoing in her ears. She crawled backward, pulling the diary close, realizing she needed to act before the clock struck midnight. Her hands were cold, slick with sweat. She pressed herself against the wall, listening. The whispers had multiplied, overlapping, rising to a cacophony. "They're coming. We see you. You're next." A sudden crash made her jump. The closet door swung open violently. Emma screamed, stumbling backward. And then, silence. A shadowy figure flickered at the threshold, indistinct, wavering between human and something else. Pale face, black eyes, dripping shadows curling around the edges. Lily, or what used to be Lily. Emma's legs refused to move. The figure raised a trembling hand, pointing toward her, and in a voice that was both Lily's and not. "If you're here, it's already begun. Don't stay, don't trust them, hide, before midnight." The shadows seemed to pulse in response, creeping across the floor toward Emma. She scrambled backward, tripping over her own feet. The diary slipped from her hands and fell open to a page she hadn't seen before. It read, in jagged letters, "They know you found this. They are coming. Midnight will claim you if you don't escape." The clock ticked closer. 11:53 p.m. The dorm room seemed to stretch, walls elongating, corners deepening into dark caverns. Every sound was amplified. The hum of the lights, the creak of the floorboards, the whispering that now felt like a storm in her ears. Emma backed into the corner again, shaking uncontrollably. Then she heard it, a deliberate, slow, steady tapping at the window. She turned, stomach in her throat, and froze. Outside, no one should have been there. but a shadowy figure leaned against the glass, black coat flapping in the cold wind, watching her. 11:59 p.m. Emma's breath caught. The whispers rose to a shrill crescendo, voices overlapping, urgent, pleading, accusing. "They're here! They're here! Don't let them take you!" And then, as the second hand of the clock hit midnight, the tapping stopped. The shadow at the window vanished. The room fell into a hollow silence so thick it pressed against her lungs. Emma was alone. For a heartbeat, she allowed herself to believe it, and then softly, from the closet, "Emma, come find me." Emma's breath came in ragged, shallow gasps as she pressed herself against the far wall, the diary clutched tightly to her chest. The whispers had stopped, replaced by a silence that roared in her ears. Every muscle in her body screamed at her to run, but the shadows in the corners of her room seemed to tighten like a vice, rooting her to the spot. The soft voice from the closet had beckoned her, but she couldn't move. Fear had paralyzed her completely. A sudden knock at the door startled her, loud and deliberate, like someone, or something, was testing her. Emma's stomach knotted. Her mind raced, imagining every horrifying possibility. Was it one of the mysterious men who had been following her? The unknown forces Lily had warned about? Or worse, had she been noticed by whatever had erased her roommate from existence? The knocking continued, each tap echoing ominously through the empty hallways. Emma swallowed, trying to steady her nerves, but the sound made her pulse pound. She crept toward the door, every step slow, measured, her bare feet brushing against the cold floor. When she reached the doorknob, it rattled violently, making her flinch. Her fingers trembled as she wrapped them around the cold metal, heart hammering against her ribcage like a warning drum. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. No answer, just a low, guttural hum that seemed to come from beneath the floorboards, vibrating through the soles of her feet. Emma hesitated, her chest tight, before opening the door just a crack. A figure stood in the hallway, pale and hunched. It was Lily, or something that had once been Lily. Her black hair clung to her face, eyes hollow and dark, almost entirely void of life, yet filled with an urgent, pleading intensity. She raised a trembling hand and beckoned Emma toward her. "Emma, you have to come with me," the figure whispered, voice eerie and distorted. "They're erasing us, one by one. We don't have much time." Emma's mind spun. "Lily, what happened to you? What's happening here?" But the figure only shook her head, shadows twisting and curling around her form like living smoke. "I don't have time to explain. They're already here. They've been watching you since the moment you found me." Emma's pulse raced as she noticed movement at the far end of the hall, shadowy hands reaching around the corners, stretching toward the room with unnatural fluidity. The walls seemed to pulse as if the building itself were alive, bending the air and light to trap her. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but the only way forward was with Lily, or whatever remained of her. The figure of Lily reached out, and Emma hesitated before grasping the icy, trembling hand. Immediately, the shadows recoiled slightly, hissing and writhing like snakes disturbed. The moment was fleeting, but it gave Emma just enough courage to step into the hallway. The door slammed shut behind her with a violent force, sending a jolt of fear through her entire body. They moved quickly, silently, down the dimly lit hallways of the dorm. Emma's senses were on high alert. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the fluorescent lights above, every distant whisper of indistinguishable voices made her heart pound faster. The walls seemed to stretch and distort, corners melting into shadows that threatened to swallow them whole. Lily led her toward a narrow service stairwell, its walls lined with peeling paint and broken tiles. "They can't follow here," Lily said, her voice hoarse but insistent. "At least, not easily. But we have to hurry." Emma's mind raced. "Follow where? What are they? Why didn't anyone else remember you?" Lily glanced at her with a mixture of sorrow and urgency. "Because once they erase someone, it's like they never existed. Records, memories, even photographs, they vanish. I tried to fight it. I tried to leave clues, but they're too strong. And now they're coming for you." The shadows at the end of the hallway shifted, stretching toward them with fluid, unnatural movements. Emma felt a cold sweat bead on her forehead as she followed Lily down the stairwell, the steps groaning under their weight. Every shadow seemed alive, reaching, twisting, writhing in anticipation. They reached a service door at the end of the stairwell, marked with strange symbols scratched into the metal. Lily produced a small, jagged key from the pocket of her coat, the same key she had dropped in Emma's dorm room weeks ago, the one Emma had never understood. "This will open it," she whispered, shoving it into Emma's hand. "Go. Find the truth. Survive. I'll slow them down." Emma's eyes widened. "No, I can't leave you." Lily shook her head violently, black eyes filled with shadowed despair. "There's nothing you can do for me now. Go, before they take us both." A sudden gust of wind, cold, unnatural, smelling faintly of decay, swept through the stairwell, extinguishing the weak light from above. The shadows surged forward like liquid, reaching for Lily. She let out a strangled cry, and the darkness pulled her backward, her form dissolving into writhing black tendrils that slithered up the walls. Emma stumbled forward, clenching the key in her hand as tears streamed down her face. She could barely hear the whispers now, which had escalated into frantic, overlapping voices. "She's next! You're next! Don't let them find you!" With trembling hands, Emma inserted the key into the service door. It clicked, and she threw it open, stumbling into a dim, narrow passageway that smelled of damp earth and rusted metal. The shadows howled behind her, pushing at her heels, but the door closed automatically behind her, cutting off the immediate pursuit. For a moment, Emma allowed herself to breathe, leaning against the wall, chest heaving, heart pounding. But the diary in her backpack reminded her of the truth. The people who vanished didn't stay gone forever. They were trapped, erased from reality, consumed by something older, something alive. And now, having seen what had happened to Lily, Emma understood. The forces at play were far beyond comprehension. She wasn't just running from shadows or hallucinations. She was running from an intelligence that erased existence itself, that fed on memory and life, and that would not stop until she too was nothing more than a forgotten whisper in the world. Her eyes fell on the faintly glowing symbols etched into the passage walls, symbols that matched the key Lily had given her. Emma swallowed hard. Somewhere ahead, there was a secret, a truth that could save her or doom her completely. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward into the darkness, clutching the key like a talisman, determined to uncover the hidden truth before it was too late. Emma stumbled through the narrow passage, the key clenched in her fist, each step echoing ominously against the damp walls. The air smelled of mildew, rust, and something far fouler she couldn't name, a metallic tang that made her stomach turn. The faint glow from the symbols etched into the walls provided just enough light to see the path ahead, a winding stairwell that seemed older than the dorm itself. She couldn't shake the feeling that the passage was alive, that it breathed and watched her as she descended deeper into the earth beneath Hillsworth University. At the bottom of the stairwell, she found a heavy iron door, scarred and rusted with age. The key fit perfectly, sliding into the lock as if it had been made for this exact moment. The door creaked open to reveal a vast, abandoned dormitory, one that had never appeared on campus maps, never existed in administrative records. Dust choked the air, thick enough to make her cough. Rows of empty, decaying rooms stretched endlessly, doors ajar, their interiors frozen in time. Each room bore signs of habitation, books stacked haphazardly, half-finished sketches on desks, clothing thrown across beds, but covered in decades of dust, untouched by life for years. Emma's heart thudded in her chest as she wandered down the hallways. The sense of being observed was overwhelming. Every shadow seemed to twitch, to lengthen unnaturally, as if stretching toward her with hungry anticipation. She paused at one room in particular. Inside, walls were plastered with photographs, students smiling, laughing, playing, studying, all of them meticulously scratched out with black ink. But one photograph made her stomach drop. Lily. Her face was there, frozen in a smile that no one now remembered, erased from every other record, now preserved here in this forsaken place. Emma's hands shook as she ran her fingers over the photos, realizing with horror that she recognized some of the other faces from campus, students she knew personally. Students who, according to every living person she had spoken to, had never existed. Names were written beneath the images, but some had been crossed out entirely, as though the erasure was permanent, inevitable. The pattern became horrifyingly clear. This was where they kept the forgotten, the erased, those who had been claimed by forces that no one dared to name, forces that could bend reality itself. She moved deeper into the dorm, finding files scattered across a long, splintered table. Opening one, she discovered sheets of paper detailing dozens of missing students, records erased from school databases, memories scrubbed from professors and classmates, incidents wiped clean from history. And then, a name scrawled in jagged, frantic handwriting made her blood run cold. Emma Brooks, her own name, marked as next. Emma staggered back, tripping over debris, her mind racing. The whispers returned, soft at first, then building, surrounding her from every angle. She's next. Don't let them find you. Too late. The shadows shifted and writhed along the walls like liquid, inching closer with an intelligence that was almost palpable. She felt their hunger, their malevolent awareness, and a sickening realization struck her. She wasn't just a visitor here. She was the target, the next victim of whatever erased Lily, whatever erased all the others. A sudden clatter made her whip around. From the far end of the hall emerged a figure shrouded in black, the same man she had glimpsed before, the one who had watched her from the dorm hallway weeks ago. His presence made the shadows surge, and Emma could feel them pressing in from all sides. The man's face remained obscured in shadow, but his intent was clear. He was here to finish what the darkness had started. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Stay back! Stay away from me!" she screamed, clutching the diary tightly against her chest. But the figure advanced, slow and deliberate, unhindered by the debris or distance. Every step he took sent a shiver through the floor, vibrations that made her knees buckle. Desperation overtook fear. Emma turned and bolted down a side hallway, the whispers now a deafening chorus screaming in her mind. "She's next! She's next! Run!" The symbols on the walls pulsed as she ran, guiding her deeper into the abandoned dorm, or perhaps warning her. She didn't know anymore whether the symbols were a path to salvation or a death trap. Finally, she stumbled into a small room at the end of the corridor. It was dimly lit by a faint, unnatural glow emanating from a circular sigil carved into the floor. She noticed papers scattered around, some with Lily's handwriting, diary entries, frantic sketches of the shadows, warnings about the others and the consuming forces. The last entry on one of the pages made her blood run cold. "If you're reading this, they know. You must leave now, or the shadows will claim you. Trust no one." Emma's hands shook violently. She had nowhere left to hide, nowhere left to run. The walls of the abandoned dorm seemed to pulse in response, as if aware that she had discovered their secret. Then, from the corner of the room, a slow, deliberate movement caught her eye. A shadow stretched toward her, and she froze, realizing that she was no longer alone. Before she could react, a whisper, sharp and urgent, filled her ears. "Emma, you have to remember. They feed on forgetting. If you forget, you die." Emma's pulse raced as the shadows advanced, writhing like living tendrils reaching for her. She turned, clutching the diary and the key Lily had given her, desperate for a solution, a way to survive. Somewhere ahead, there had to be an exit, a truth hidden in the maze of the forgotten dormitory. And somewhere behind her, she could feel the presence of the man in the black coat, patient, calculating, waiting for the moment to strike. Her chest heaved as she realized the horrifying reality. Lily had tried to escape this place, had tried to warn her, but even she had been pulled into the shadows. And now Emma was alone, trapped in the hidden dormitory with the knowledge of what awaited her, marked as the next to be erased. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to focus. Somewhere in this labyrinth of forgotten students and erased memories lay a secret, a path, a way to survive. She took a deep breath, tightening her grip on the key, and stepped forward into the darkness, ready to uncover the truth, though terrified of what it might be. Emma's legs ached as she stumbled through the endless corridors of the abandoned dorm, her grip tight on the diary and the jagged key Lily had given her. Every shadow seemed alive, writhing with a hunger that chilled her to the bone. The whispers returned, louder now, overlapping into a deafening crescendo. She's next. She's next. Forget and disappear. She stumbled, nearly falling over a pile of broken desks and decaying chairs, and realized with terror that the longer she stayed, the more the shadows seeped into her own thoughts, threatening to erase her memories, her very existence. She paused in a hallway, her breath ragged, and studied the symbols etched into the walls. Her eyes widened as recognition struck. The symbols formed a pattern, a path that led to the heart of the dormitory. Something instinctual urged her forward, though every instinct screamed to run. The air grew colder, heavier, pressing down on her shoulders, and yet she moved, following the glowing sigils that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly rhythm. At last, she reached a massive room, its entrance framed by arches etched with countless symbols. Inside, she found a circular chamber, its floor inscribed with an intricate design of black and silver lines that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Shadows swirled at the edges, writhing and coalescing into forms that seemed almost human. Emma's heart raced as she stepped forward, realizing with a sickening clarity that this was the source, the center of the darkness that had erased Lily and countless others. A whisper rose from the shadows, clear, commanding. Emma Brooks, you have come far. Do you remember? Emma's breath caught. She shook her head. Remember what? Who are you? What do you want from me? The shadows pulsed and writhed, forming the shape of a figure, a man, black coat flowing, face still obscured. And then, impossibly, another figure emerged from the darkness beside him. Lily. Her hollow eyes met Emma's, pleading. She stepped forward, but the shadows seemed to pull her back. They feed on forgetting, Lily whispered, voice trembling. Every erased person, every memory lost, they become part of them. They are not people. They are voids. And if you forget, Emma, you will be nothing. The figure in the black coat spoke, voice hollow, echoing through the chamber. You shouldn't be here, Emma. You were never meant to see this. But since you have, you will understand. He gestured, and the shadows surged around Emma, pressing at the edges of her consciousness, whispering her doubts, her fears, her insecurities, rewriting her memories in subtle, terrifying ways. Emma felt herself slipping. Faces she remembered blurred. Events she thought were true distorted. She felt the erasure begin, small at first, a missed detail, a question she couldn't answer, but growing, suffocating. She clutched the diary to her chest, repeating Lily's warning in her mind. They feed on forgetting. If you forget, you die. Panic surged, and then realization struck. The diary, the key, Lily's warnings, they were her anchor. She closed her eyes and focused, recalling every memory of Lily, of the past weeks, every whispered warning, every shared moment. She clung to the memories as the shadows pressed in, screaming, tugging at the edges of her mind. Slowly, painfully, she felt a tether form, a connection to reality that the shadows could not sever. The black-coated figure advanced, and Emma raised the key, trembling. She remembered a passage in Lily's diary. The key is not to escape them, but to confront the source. Face the void with what you will not forget. They cannot erase what you fight to remember. Taking a shaky breath, Emma stepped into the center of the sigil, gripping the key. The shadows surged, black tendrils lashing out, and she felt the cold of the void seep into her bones. "I remember," she whispered, voice trembling but resolute. "I remember Lily. I remember myself. I will not forget." The shadows recoiled, shrieking, twisting violently as if in pain. The black-coated figure staggered, his form rippling like smoke, and Lily stepped forward, her eyes brightening slightly as the darkness around her began to dissolve. The chamber shook, walls trembling, symbols burning with an intense light. Emma's heart pounded as the void collapsed inward, folding onto itself, pulling the shadows and the black-coated figure into a spiraling vortex of darkness. For a heartbeat, everything was silence, and then the chamber was empty. The shadows were gone. The oppressive air lifted. Emma fell to her knees, trembling, clutching the diary and key, her body exhausted, her mind racing. She looked around. The abandoned dorm remained, decayed and dusty, but the malevolent presence was gone. And then she realized something chilling. The photographs, the names, the erased students, they had returned, faintly visible now in the dust of the old desks. Lily's photo glimmered, restored. The records in the diary matched what she remembered. But one final note caught her eye, written in a hand she didn't recognize, jagged and dark. "The next will come. They are patient. They wait for the forgotten." Emma staggered back, her hands trembling. She understood now. She had survived, but the darkness was not gone. It would return. It thrived on memory, on erasure, on the fragile human mind. And somewhere, beyond the walls of this hidden dorm, there were countless others who had been claimed, or were waiting to be. Lily appeared beside her, solid now, no longer hollow-eyed. She smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and sorrow. "You did it," she whispered. "You remembered. That's what keeps them at bay. For now." Emma's legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the cold floor. She realized the terrifying truth. Survival was temporary. Vigilance was eternal. She had faced the void and survived, but the memory of what had happened, the knowledge of what erased people meant, would haunt her forever. Every shadow, every flicker of darkness would be a reminder that forgetting could kill, and that somewhere, lurking in the corners of existence, the void waited patiently, always hungry for the next forgotten soul. As dawn's pale light filtered through cracks in the abandoned dorm, Emma rose slowly, holding the diary and key like talismans. Lily's hand squeezed hers briefly before she disappeared into the hallways, leaving Emma alone, but alive. The whispers were gone for now, but deep in her mind, Emma knew the truth. She would never truly be free, and the next student, the next roommate, would be the one who didn't remember. Emma took a deep breath, stepping into the first rays of sunlight creeping through the broken windows. Behind her, the dorm lay in eerie silence, hiding its horrors for the next unwary soul. And somewhere, in the shadows, the void waited. Patient, hungry, eternal.